Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Morgan, the upper school Latin teacher, and I'm speaking to you today about defying expectations. And I'm telling you a story, a great story about a female leader of the early Christian church. So let's begin. One of the reasons that I'm telling you this is because March, just last month, was Women's History Month. The first time I gave this homily in upper school was actually in March of 2019. And this is a really great time for us to reflect on the influence of female leaders in politics, in science, in arts, and in religion in this case. Now, growing up reading the Bible, there were some phrases in the New Testament that they never really set well with me. Things like not permitting a woman to teach, or submitting to their husbands, or even having it be shameful for a woman to speak in church. And here I am, a very outspoken female teacher speaking in a church. So you can imagine that these lines never really landed with me. But if you look at other places in the text, you see stories like this. That when Jesus rose early on the first day of the week, he appeared to Mary Magdalene first. And it was Mary Magdalene that went and told the disciples that Jesus had risen from the dead. And I think sometimes it's easy to look over the important role that women had in the early Christian movement, and even the important roles that women were able to have in the ancient world. A great example of this is the story of Thecla, which we learn about from a book known as the Acts of Paul and Thecla. You can think of this as sort of a spin-off to the Acts of the Apostles that we find in the New Testament. The Acts of Paul and Thecla was written around the same time in the late 2nd century of the Common Era, and it details the story of a young woman in a Roman city who happens to hear Paul speak in a neighboring house and becomes so enamored with his words and his message that she walks away from the life that has been planned for her to become a follower of Christ. Thecla lives in a city in the Roman Empire in what is modern-day Turkey. The town is called Iconium, and it is here where she is a noble woman, the daughter of a wealthy woman in the town who has arranged a marriage with a wealthy young man. Now, Thecla, in this arranged engagement, was one day sitting at her window, and she hears from her neighbor's house the preachings of Paul, who has come to Iconium spreading the word of the Lord. And he says things like, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God, and blessed are those who abandon their secular enjoyments." And she is so consumed with his message and so enamored with his words that she cannot be torn away from the window. And she sits there listening, drinking it all in. And it worries her mother and it worries her fiance, so much so that they bring Paul before the governor of the town. They say he is corrupting the youth. He's corrupting the minds of our young men and our young women, making them turn away from their social and familial obligations. And the governor imprisons Paul, but Thecla actually bribes the jailer and sneaks into the jail to sit at Paul's feet and listen to his words more. When Thecla's mother and fiance find her in the jail, they bring her before the governor. And the governor asks her, why is she abandoning this plan, these expectations laid out by her family? And all she does is stay silent. She refuses to answer. So what does her mother do, as moms tend to do? She says, "Let's burn her at the stake." Yeah, moms were a little bit more aggressive back then. But they actually do. They decide to bring her into the arena. They call together the community, and the people set her on fire, or they try to. They set fire to the pile, but the flame does not touch her. And the Lord broke forth the earth and a cloud from above to pour down great quantities of rain, and Thecla is saved. The governor sets her free, and she goes off to find Paul, also having left the city. And together they come to the town of Antioch, which is in southern Turkey on the border of modern-day Syria. And there, as they enter the town, a wealthy man named Alexander sees Thecla and he falls in love with her. He has to kiss her. But she is not a fan of this. He decides, because he's rich and powerful, that he will just kiss her in the middle of the street. She won't have it, so she pushes him. She tears his coat, takes his crown off his head, and makes him appear ridiculous before the people. Now, as you might imagine, Alexander acts with calmness and reason. No, I'm just kidding. He says, throw her to the lions. And now she gets thrown into the arena with the lions, and all the people come out and they're like, yeah, all right. But when the she-lion comes out, and this was the meanest she-lion they had, the she-lion actually runs to Thecla and starts protecting her. First, the she-lion kills a she-bear and rips it to pieces. And then the most fierce male lion runs at her, and they fight and they kill each other. So then they bring out all these other wild animals, and Thecla stands there untouched by all these animals. And she looks back and she sees a pool of water in the arena, and she goes, now is the time for me to be baptized. Of course. What else are you going to do when you're being attacked by tons of wild animals? So she throws herself into the water and says, in your name, O Lord, I am baptized. And the people are like, no, don't do it. Don't go in the water. Because the water is filled with man-eating seals. Like, no. But then a storm comes out and lightning strikes and all the seals are electrocuted. But everybody's like, but where's Thecla? Where's Thecla? And then she emerges, unscathed, unharmed, unelectrocuted, uneaten. And now, as you can imagine, the entire crowd is just like, Team Thecla, all the way. But Alexander, still not having it. He says, you know what? I've got some bulls. What if we take a rope, tie the rope to Thecla, tie that rope to the bulls, and send them? She'll be dragged about, torn to pieces. And the governor's like, well, okay. So they do this. And just as the bulls get sent to run and sort of, drag or tear, a flame comes out and it burns the rope around Thecla, and she emerges unscathed again. At this point in time, everybody's like, wow. And the governor himself is like, who are you? And she says, I'm a servant of the living God. I'm a believer of Jesus Christ. And that is why none of these animals could touch me. And that is what I am intended to be a defense to those who are hopeless. And so he releases her, and Thecla goes to Paul with a huge following of people. And Paul says, go and spread the word of the Lord. And she travels around the cities of southern Turkey, and she sets up a cave church where she performs miracles and cures the sick and helps the poor. And she brings in women from across the Roman Empire that want to follow in her footsteps and take up this mission. And she becomes a role model to them and to many women following her. She's worshipped. She's a saint with a feast day. She has dozens of chapels dedicated to her across the world, cities named after her. And people remember the sacrifices that she made by stepping away from what was expected of her and doing something more, doing something that she believed in and that she thought was right and meaningful and purposeful. And it just reminds us that without women preachers, we would have no knowledge of the resurrection, and that within the tenets of Christianity, there are so many opportunities for everyone to contribute and to be a part of this society and this community. It makes me think, in these times of social distancing and quarantining ourselves and sheltering in place with our families, that it's easy to be alone or to be overwhelmed. But it's also a time to sort of defy the expectations of ourselves and step out of that loneliness or disconnect, and just find the opportunities to be creative and joyful and funny, and find the opportunities to share memories with our families and get back into board game night or puzzles or just coloring and fun. It's a great time to be kind, to give back, and to let others know that you're thinking about them and sharing in this moment. And more than anything, it's an important time to be loved and to give support and to tell your parents you love them, even your siblings, that they mean something to you. But more than anything, it's an important time to take care of yourself and your loved ones. Because when we get out of this, we're going to need to defy some expectations and do something great. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful week and a wonderful school year. Thank you.